Yes, you boy. You're dead.
Your time is extended!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in with us for another episode of the Retro Achievements Podcast. We cover a variety of genres, topics, and discuss the bits and bytes of yesteryear. On our first episode, one of our guests was the progenitor of our whole community, Scott, where we were able to get some introspection on how and why the website came to be and what those first steps looked like. From there, we visited events, the junior program, the highest ranking member on the site, and plenty more. More recently, though, we sat down with Wes and got an idea what development behind the scenes, past, present, and future looks like. We still have deeper to dig, however. In an effort to learn more about what makes this whole machine function, I was able to secure our guest here today, JesseTG, who has been diligently coding away on an enhanced remake of the MelonDS core, from libretro, which aims to provide standalone parity, reliability, and usability. With such an undertaking and font of knowledge, this is sure to be an episode worth diving in on. Jesse, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Logan. Thank you very much for having me today.
Yeah, no, definitely something I wanted to have in the works for a little bit now. I see you pretty active in the community, active in Discord. I even took a look at the MelonDS page itself. I saw you name dropped on a couple of the blog posts there, clearly getting some stuff done in recognition. Let's just kind of start with how you got started with technology as a whole, though. I kind of want to start broad. I want to start in the early kind of days. What started making you think I want to look at electronics a little more closely?
That honor goes to a children's toy, or a children's keyboard called Comfy Time, circa 1995. My mother got me. It's like a colorful, durable. I don't remember if it's a keyboard or if it's a peripheral that goes on top. But it's like my first computer for kids. My parents got one for me before I was even 2 years old, actually, and then things sort of spiraled out of control from there.
So definitely something that started super early. How did it advance from there? You know, let's fast forward 2 or 3 years. What are you looking at? When did you get your hands on a first real computer?
Fast forward 2 or 3 years, and my family and I are going on a vacation to the Bahamas, and they need something to keep me from crying too much on the trains and planes. Train to Miami, plane to Bahamas.
Oh, yeah.
That something was a Game Boy Color. In fact, my first handheld game was Looney Tunes Carrot Crazy.
Wow.
It's actually pretty good, too, not just like rose-tinted glasses.
Still holds up.
Yeah, I still have the original cartridge in the other room as a sort of monument to how far I've come. I might even frame it at some point.
I mean, definitely one of those things, if it holds a good place in your heart and is not a bad game, honestly, why not, put it somewhere special? Let's kind of jump into how you got into RA, though. Fast forward quite a bit. When did you first kind of get introduced to this kind of the achievement hunting website, that kind of thing?
I first heard of Retro Achievements not long after I got involved with the Retro Arch community, about last year, maybe 11, 13 months ago or so.
Okay.
Saw Retro Achievements in the settings menu. I had just set up Retro Arch, and I was toying with all the dials and knobs to see what I could do to customize my gameplay.
Sure.
Retro Achievements stood out, got curious, signed up, and, well, now I have an active profile. I'm not a big achievements guy.
Sure.
Like, I play exclusively on softcore, for example, and I'm not particularly interested in comparing my own gameplay skills to those of others.
No worries there.
What draws me to emulation in general is the ability to not only re-experience games that have been locked away for years or even introduce them to new audiences, but the ability to play games the way you want to is a big draw for me. Whether that be speeding past grindy sections that are in otherwise great games, or rewinding using cheats, ROM hacks, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I think Retro Achievements is just a natural extension of that idea of experiencing your games your way.
I mean, it's a great point to throw on there. I definitely think there's a lot of people who kind of frown on softcore. And for whatever reason, I'm not with that camp. I'm not somebody who masters a lot of games. I purely play what I'd like to play and move on. Once it stops being fun, I'm going to find something else to play. But I do think it's one of those things to keep in mind that, it should be some form of your game your way. That's a great way to put it. But you touched on being involved in the retro art community a little bit beforehand, before finding out about RA. How did that get started? Give me a little bit of info there.
Boredom and impulsiveness. I installed RetroArch, and not long after, I decided to set up the Dolphin core.
Oh, wow.
And I then decided to play F-Zero GX.
There you go.
Then, when I ran into difficulty, I decided, fuck it, I'm going to make it better. That didn't pan out, mostly because... So, the way most libretro cores are set up historically is they just fork the original repository and make changes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes contributing back, sometimes not. That's the quickest and easiest way to get something up and running. Problem is, it doesn't lend itself well to following updates upstream. And since Dolphin is very active and moves very quickly, the libretro core, well, it got out of date very quickly. And I decided to fix that. Problem is, it was a monumental effort on something that would have to be repeated in 2 years or so.
Oh, no.
So I decided to step back and try something a little different. That something little different was MelonDS. And the reason I chose that was, once again, boredom and impulsivity. Specifically, I was playing a horror game, the nameless game, the Nashi no Gemu, it's called.
Not familiar, unfortunately.
It has segments. I'm gesturing here, but we're...
Just picture broad gestures.
I'm from Long Island. I gesture with my hands a lot.
It's instinct.
Anyway, it has segments where you hold the DS normally, and it has segments where you hold the screen sideways.
Oh.
Problem is twofold. One, no ability to rotate the screen sideways. So I literally had to hold my Steam Deck sideways. It's, well, not meant to be held like that. It's clumsy and awkward.
Sure.
Two, to make that kind of adjustment, you would have to go through the core options menu. You know, pause, go through a menu or two, set a toggle, and go back to the game. Maybe once or twice, it's okay. But flipping back and forth becomes aggravating and just dampens your gameplay experience. And then, on boredom and impulse, I decided, fuck it, I'm going to make it better.
I'm seeing a trend here. Yeah, as soon as something frustrates you to the point of, like, I can't deal with this anymore, I'm going to fix it myself, damn it.
It's more than just a trend. It's basically the story of my life.
So that's what I was going to try and dial backwards. I started pretty early. Let's go back to those early days. What's the first piece of technology that broke and you said, well, I'm going to figure out how to fix this thing?
First thing that broke that I'm trying to... You know, this is the first I've thought of that. I can't think of anything with regards to literal breaks, but there is one thing that comes to mind. A couple years, maybe 8 years ago or so, I was playing... This isn't a retro game, but it's the same idea. The game's called Uplink. It's a PC game. It was first released, turn of the century, maybe?
Okay.
General premise is you're a hacker. Make money by hacking into people's bank accounts, breaking into corporations, and trading off the resulting changes in their stock price. A lot of fun.
Yeah, very tech heavy, very, kind of cyberish. Sounds good.
It was so long ago. The game takes place in 2010. At the time, that was about 10 years in the future.
Oh, no.
Anyway, where I'm going with this is there's a mod for it called Uplink OS, and it makes a whole bunch of usability improvements to the game. It adjusts the size of it adjusts the text, because the game's original text is really tiny, because it's made for CRT monitors that are also pretty small.
Sure.
It makes the game easier to read, more variety to the procedurally generated world, because, there's different companies or different people to hack into every time. And a whole bunch of other little niceties.
Quality of life improvements and the like.
Exactly. That's the term. A while ago, the developers, I think they used to include the source code for the game on a disc, or maybe as part of a promotion. I don't remember the details.
Okay.
But this mod already existed, and I decided I want to play it, but I'm a Linux user.
Uh-oh.
So I think you can guess what I did next.
If you're going to figure out how to get this shit to work on Linux yourself.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
That's exactly what I tried to do, you could say.
Uh-oh.
Because I did manage to get it running on Linux, Problem is, I didn't know when to stop. There were all sorts of little tweaks I had wanted to make on mostly a technical level.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately distracted me from actually being able to ship anything. Nevertheless, it was still a valuable lesson in how to get things done yourself.
That's exactly what I was going to try and find where those early ones, and obviously you're still doing them with this whole Melon thing. It's kind of funny to hear that this is just sort of a side tangent project to the whole Sisyphean dolphin endeavor that has to get repeated every couple of years. Can you shed a little light on, is it just, you said it's the update frequency and all those forks, but do you see any sign of that slowing down or getting stable or?
For Dolphin?
Yeah.
Probably not for a while.
No.
And this is what leads me into my work on MelonDS. This is why I decided to take a different approach for that core. As I said earlier, most libretro cores, historically, fork of the original repository. I did something different in that I pull in MelonDS as a dependency, the same way you would, a library like STL or whatever. This way, updating it, instead of having to deal with umpteen merge conflicts and having to plan ahead to make sure they don't happen, I can literally just, I don't know if you heard that, I snapped my fingers. I can literally just set a newer version to use.
Right.
And then move on.
Okay.
That's great. But another problem historically with libretro cores is a lack of communication between the core's author and the original emulator's authors. And it would be necessary in this case because I quickly ran into various difficulties with the MelonDS core. It was originally written as a standalone emulator. Like, it was never intended to be embedded.
Right, integrated into different things.
And the way the code was written, that shows. Like, for example, before I got involved, there was no way to inspect a DS-ROM's metadata, its header, before inserting it into the console. And for various reasons, I needed to be able to do that for MelonDS DS. So, I decided, fuck it, I'm going to fix it. I wasn't bored this time because I had already started doing the thing.
You had a reason, yes.
I still nevertheless decided to take matters into my own hands. And I continued to do so for the past little less than a year, fixing bugs along the way.
Right.
Oh, also, even before that, I implemented mic support in RetroArch.
Oh, wow. That was your doing.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. I know there's a lot of games out there that actually have that as some kind of mechanic and feature. That's fantastic to hear. Well, good on you for that. I noticed you work, from what I could tell, fairly close with the actual emulator developer. I was taking a look at the website. How did you guys end up linking up? Was it just you reaching out because you had your own project going on and just struck up conversation and things ended up working out? Or
pretty much, I just showed up, started writing code and said, this is a thing I made and here's why I think it would be neat. Like, this is my use case. Could you please take a look and review this code? And if you don't like it, what can I do to make it something we can all be happy with?
Sure.
And repeat, annoy the hell out of them until they trust me.
Yep. But I mean, it seemed like you approached them with pretty much honest intentions and were willing to take some feedback on that. So that's one of the things. You came in knowledgeable and ready to be working with them and not just going, fix it. So that was how long ago into your Melon adventure would you say that you met up with them? Near
the beginning. Actually, I think, no, before the beginning.
Oh.
Because when I tried to use MelonDS before I started, the DSi?
Yeah.
It's NAND, its storage has a limited amount of space, and it can't be extended because the DSi wouldn't know what to do with it. So you would have to juggle games yourself. Well, I forget what solution I proposed, but it's not important. The point is, it wasn't viable. I got disappointed and moved on. After that didn't pan out, then I decided to start making a MelonDS core remake.
Gotcha.
When I started talking shop with the developers and regulars more often.
So you were kind of looking initially at a way to solve a problem of the DSi, toss something out there. It didn't happen to land on the money, but that's what got you kicking around looking at the DS in general, really.
Pretty much, yeah. Throw in a couple of rabbit holes and tangents in there.
Was it a console that you played a lot in your day growing up?
Oh, yeah. Totally. DS and DSi. I remember I was absolutely enamored with Super Mario 64 DS.
Oh God, who wasn't? Yeah.
And I was just as disappointed when I accidentally left it at a Burger King.
No. Oh, that hurt. Oh God. Like just the card or your whole DS?
Just the card.
Oh.
It was, nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah, it still stings though. Dang. All right. You would never, it's as easy as phone keys wallet, the 3-tab check, and now you think about all the things you left behind as a kid.
The DSi, I did get one a couple of years later, and there were a lot of great games on there as well that I had fun with.
No, what were some of your like highlight games on these things? Beyond Mario, obviously.
Let's see. Retro Game Challenge, actually.
Awesome. Absolutely. It's one of my probably most played games on Retro Achievements, and that I don't play a ton of games on here. One of the ones I have the most unlocks on, I'll say, which, yeah.
An underrated masterpiece.
Oh my God.
Let's see, what else? WarioWare DIY
So
was also a big one.
Fantastic series.
I used to read a blog dedicated to DS games called Tiny Cartridge. Is that still around?
I haven't even heard of that. That's, wow.
I hope they're still around. But anyway, at the time, I submitted a video of a micro game that I had made. It was, the David Caruso meme where he puts on the sunglasses?
Yes.
With SI Miami?
Of course.
The micro game revolved around that. Even while recording it, I couldn't stop myself from giggling my balls off.
Well, yeah, come on. That's a hilarious concept. God. It does look, by the way, that Tiny Cartridge is still up and is still getting updated and running right along, as far as I can tell.
Whew. That's a relief.
Yes, those things still go on. So, did you have a lot of involvement over at Tiny Cartridge? Regular user, regular reader, or?
Regular reader at the time.
Gotcha.
But my point is, the DS and DSi, big influence on my life in gaming. Here's a curveball. Are you familiar with a console called the Open Pandora?
Not what the... I feel like if I say no, it's like gonna open Pandora's box or something. What is it?
Well, in some sense, you would be correct.
Uh-oh.
And the risk of sounding like a hipster with really thick rimmed glasses, you probably haven't heard of it.
Definitely not. Looking it up right now. All right, yeah, tell me about it.
It was not a big name. It was spearheaded by a couple of... They were emulation and Linux enthusiasts, so they were tech guys.
Sure.
And the premise is it was a handheld that ran Linux, which was very uncommon at the time.
Oh, of course.
And it had a full keyboard, like with actual buttons and gaming controls.
I'm seeing 2 joysticks on these things.
2 little nubs, actually.
Gotcha.
It was transformative in my life because of 2 things. One, I had already been into emulation and retro gaming by that point for 5-6 years at that point, maybe.
All right.
Well, the first thing got me into was the general idea of open source software, where you can look at what makes software programs tick and customize them or submit changes as you see fit. Like RA libretro is open source, for example. RetroArch is open source. We're using OBS to record this now, and I think that's open source.
I believe so.
This general philosophy of distributing software, sharing information is everywhere. And I became interested in it because I could tinker more freely. It gave me the impetus to pick up a book and start learning how to program.
Okay.
In middle school, I had made a bunch of small games on Game Maker at the time. In fact, my mother may even still have them tucked away on a disc or a CD somewhere. But this was the first time I had decided to dive into anything resembling serious software development. I started, and then things sort of spiraled out of control from there.
Spiraled out of control in a good way, though. Honestly, it sounds like it. This sort of, when you were talking about that, I believe it was the game you were talking about earlier that you had to get working on Linux.
Uplink OS.
Uplink OS.
Uplink is the game. Uplink OS is
the redone quality of life. Yep. It's funny to see just throughout your entire life, it seems you have this passion for tinkering, and that even extended into that project where it's like, I'm getting the enjoyment not necessarily out of playing the game that I got to work. I'm going to keep tinkering away at the push I hope to release one day.
There's a little bit of spite and rage in there too. Not at people.
No, just I can do it, damn it. Yes, I will get you to work.
No, more like I'm going to do it because not doing so would piss me off.
Yes, I'm already feeling a little bit of fury, so we need to get this done. It's kind of interesting. Do you see somewhere down the line, after you get this thing up and running, your MelonDS, doesn't sound like you said yourself it's going to take much to keep it smooth sailing. Where do you see yourself directing your attention afterwards?
Well, first things first is shipping it, and I'm very close to that. I'm in the middle of making sure that RetroArch's build infrastructure can build it, and then once that's done, you'll be able to download it within RetroArch itself on distributions that support it.
All right.
I will slap 1.0 on it, call it done with an asterisk, and go on a big, huge press tour.
Yeah, everybody knows that you get huge and famous after these kind of things. We look forward to seeing you, what kind of mansion you decide to buy.
Yeah, if only. But that's, unless somebody happens to discover some weird, crazy new bug, it may well be ready by the time this episode airs.
That's exciting to hear. All right, that is exciting to hear. People keep an eye out. There might be something exciting on the way. But it still lends me to the question that I kind of threw at you earlier there, where you don't strike me as the type of guy who sits still. You can't sit still. Where's your attention going to drift to? What's going to be the next problem Jesse encounters that, damn it, he's going to do it himself?
Well, not sitting still is kind of, I was going to say my MO, but more like my entire life. As for what happens next, that would be updating my resume.
Oh, all right, taking it out into the real world.
Yes. This whole project, it started as out of boredom and impulse, but not long after, it sort of evolved into a journey of self-discovery and development, even putting aside the technical skills. As a consequence of working on MelonDS, as well as my simultaneous contributions to RetroArch, I am much better now than I was a year ago at things like working in teams, breaking tasks into organized chunks and putting them in the right order, understanding what users want out of the software they're using, making sure that the things I make are pleasant and enjoyable, managing bugs. These are all the soft skills that I wanted to get better at, and the best way to do so was with practice.
I mean, it's an obvious answer, but it's entertaining to see that you got it done through something you were kind of passionate about, and that was semi-related to your interests and entertainment value. You know, you said it yourself, the DS was no small involvement in your growing up and impact of gaming. To see that it in some way led to what could possibly be a viable career path it's good to see. You know, it's a fun way to learn those soft skills. That being said, what are you hoping to land? Is there anything that you have your eyes on, just industry-wise? Is it any specific kind of thing, or just a broad technology area?
I'm not married to any specific industry. More than anything, software engineering, especially something involving systems, be that desktop, embedded, mobile. I can do web if necessary. Like, I have made interesting things unrelated to games in browsers before. All
right, so definitely an experience and a skill set that you can take out into a viable market. There's demand for what you can do.
Right.
And hey, why not start getting paid for it? That being said, do you think you'll ever pick up these kind of hobby coding projects again? Surely it'll be somewhere on your radar.
Oh yeah, totally.
I mean, Dolphin is obviously going to keep going, like you said, for a while. I bring it up again because it's sort of a topic of a hot debate, and everybody wants to know in the retro achievements community. We obviously are concerned with when is it going to get achievements enabled on it. You know, that's what a lot of people are asking our end.
Well, there's a couple things I want to juggle in the near future. The search for my next day job being one of them. Any viewers out there know anybody, wink wink. Besides that, I do intend to continue working on various neat code things, and that includes updates to MelonDS. Even putting aside fixing any bugs that happen to crop up, there are additional features I want to add for full parity with upstream. Like, here's something, for example, are you familiar with the game Lunar Nights?
Yes, of course.
And you know how it integrates with the Boktai trilogy, right?
Yep.
you can insert one of the cartridges, and Lunar Nights is compatible with the solar sensor.
I knew they had some kind of crossplay capability, but I did not actually have the Boktai thing, so.
It can use the solar sensor and use that. And I don't just mean in Boktai, but like in Lunar Nights itself.
Wow, all right.
MelonDS itself supports emulating the solar sensor,
Mm-hmm.
but through hotkeys, like not through actual hardware.
Right.
The thing I want to do is introduce that actual hardware. Like libretro already has support for light sensors. Light sensors are usually used for manually adjusting screen brightness, or automatically adjusting screen brightness, rather. But these days, for very little else. Why? Why not explore that?
Right, it's hardware sitting right there.
Pretty much. RetroArch does not yet support luminance sensors on Linux. It has the API, but nothing's hooked up to it there. So 3 guesses as to what I'm going to do about it.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, so that's on your radar.
Yes, that's one example. If you look at the GitHub repository for MelonDS, just look at any tickets or any issues with the enhancements tag, and you can get a pretty good idea of what I want to do next. Now, not everything on there may actually be done. A major reason I haven't done any of this stuff is another big part of this journey of discovery and learning is learning how to call it a day and ship something.
Sure.
I have perfectionist tendencies that sometimes result in highly polished things, but if improperly managed, can result in me falling down rabbit holes and going off track, and the whole thing gets derailed.
Sure.
I was, just before working on a MelonDS, I was trying my hand at video game development, more specifically releasing a commercial game.
Okay. How did that go?
Not well. The game itself was fun. In fact, there's still an old build you can play in browser. Problem is, I was brain fucking it.
What do you mean?
I had envisioned this big...
Oh, it was going to be the next best thing, you know.
Yeah, I had envisioned this big magnum opus with, online play, leaderboards, different game modes, AI trained via machine learning. This was before ChatGPT came out.
Right. You had some very high ambitions here.
Yes, but these ambitions turned into a big boulder that I kept having to push up a hill, only for it to roll back when I thought I was near the top.
Right.
I had become Sisyphus of Greek legend before I knew it. And sort of sapped the joy out of it. And from there, at one point I had started MelonDS before I stopped working on this game. I was procrastinating, basically. And then I decided to be honest with myself. Making this game, it's become a drudge. I don't see any payoff in sight.
You're not even having any joy out of it, yeah.
And it became a slog, so I stopped.
I mean, honestly, though, it's definitely a good thing to recognize. It sounded like you had a bit of an albatross around your neck about it for a while. One of those things that you just couldn't put down. It was a stove you got burnt on with the uplink game there, and weren't able to push something because you wanted it to be better and better and better. It sounds like you touched the stove again here with this game development thing. You had such high dreams and ambitions that you set up an impossible task for yourself. That's far more than a one-man job. You're talking about things that, AAA studios like to do. I was just going to say, it's nice to see that you're getting things kind of back and corrected where you're acknowledging, I am looking at this enhancement tab on Git, and you're acknowledging, hey, this is a wish list. I'm going to ship something soon, but here's what, it's a wish list, no promises. But recognizing that it's all right to ship something and then just build on it as you see fit. You were mentioning your love of open source earlier. Those things are a passion project, and it's done out of sort of a love of the job, a love of the code. And if you're not having any of that joy anymore, you're not going to be wanting to do it or doing it reliably or really producing anything timely or enjoyable for anybody to use. Would you agree?
Yeah. Pretty much. Only difference is this particular game is not open source. It's made in Unity and has a lot of stuff I bought.
Sure. No. Game aside, it's one of those things that, you're now working in open source projects. The DSI stuff you were working on was open source. that kind of thing.
What I was getting at is there's stuff in there I'm not allowed to redistribute.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely properties and stuff in there that just aren't yours to pass out. Totally understandable. We do still have a little bit more to get back to. We are going to see you folks, though, when we return.
Come at me with everything you've got, understand?
Playtime is ended.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. retroachievementspodcast@gmail.com if you want to write in. We've been talking with Jesse, going over a broad perspective of technology, where he's been, the contribution he's made, kind of how he got started early in life, how he got started in the DS scene, moved from there, actually talked to the developer of MelonDS, saw a way to make an improvement a little bit more reliable, talked about ambitions in game development, and how, setting out for a little bit of a tall mountain climb can be a little bit daunting and sometimes defeating, but can still be a valuable lesson learned. Well, I want to keep going down here, though, Jesse. Like, you're working on some ambitious things. You want to take it out into the real world. You want to look at maybe some kind of software development. I'm still of the mind that you might have game development on your menu somewhere. Have you thought about doing something smaller scale?
Funny you say that, because this game was supposed to be something small scale.
Oh, no.
I'll send you a link offline and
Sure.
Post it on the description somewhere.
Yeah, I'll throw it in there. Yeah.
The game was named Chromovaders. The premise is it was like a mix of Galaga and Tetris. It's a fixed screen shooter where the enemies they turn into colored blocks when you shoot them, and you have to match them in lines of 3 or more. It was fun, and the playtesters certainly believe so. More often than not, play the game multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
This was originally supposed to be a small project.
Mm-hmm.
Then scope creep set in.
Yeah.
I had wrote this big-ass test suite. I tried to set up an automated build pipeline with all the platforms I had intended to support, and there were a lot of platforms I intended to support.
Ooh.
I had set up this whole machine learning pipeline.
Just actively multiplying your workload.
Yeah, and then it all just slowly crumbled. It was crumbling faster than I could fix it.
Right.
I fixed one bug, more popped up, and these weren't just bugs, they were
full-on system instability issues.
Yeah. For example, the game's movement takes place on a grid, but objects still move in continuous space. So, like, when you move, it's not instant next frame. It takes, like, the fraction of a second.
Right.
It slides across the screen. The problem is, 2 objects are not supposed to overlap, and if they did, it would cause a crash.
So if 2 things started to try and occupy the same square.
Yeah, and that wasn't supposed to happen, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why this happened. Most likely due to my use of Unity's physics engine for, detecting collisions and stuff, but this was a fundamental design problem. It was my white whale, and unfortunately, I didn't manage to land it. And that was just one of the factors that led to me deciding to wash my hands of the game and move on. And the moment I did, I felt much better.
Sure.
I'm generally not the kind to give up on something. I am extraordinarily stubborn.
Oh, there's a difference between stubborn and headstrong. And there's also a difference between giving up and just acknowledging, you know what, this isn't even what I want to be doing anymore. I hear a lot of beating yourself up. I hear a lot of that over there, and even in the start of the episode. And I understand a healthy amount of being strong or tough on yourself gets things done. But it also is good to recognize the accomplishments you have made.
Oh yeah, I agree. But beating myself up, it's not my intent to do today. But I was definitely doing plenty of that throughout the development of Chromovaders.
Sure.
Another big thing I had tried to do that didn't pan out was land a publisher. Get funding, resource utilization, all for arcade-styled game.
A little difficult to do, yeah.
Bit off more than I could chew, and then once I recognized that and moved on, I felt a lot better about myself, my accomplishments, my life. I became much more cheerful.
Sure.
That is part of why I'm intentionally not putting in all the features for MelonDS.
Right.
Knowing when to draw the line and ship something is an important skill, and I saw this as an opportunity to hone that.
Oh yeah, I mean, nobody gets to the end of their days and goes, oh man, I wish I worked more. It's always, I wish I had more joy, I wish I had more time with my family, those kind of things. So
The thing that I do ship, though, I do want to make it polished and as free of bugs as possible.
oh yeah. No, I mean, come on, that's just shipping good software. So I did want to kind of tie back a little bit into achievements a little bit. Is it difficult to incorporate those since you just have a kind of that dependency focused on MelonDS, or did you get a little bit of an idea of how that worked by incorporating them in your platform, or can you tell me a bit about how that goes from that side of things?
Believe it or not, there is a library that you have to use or for retro achievements, right? It's called Chivos, I think.
Okay.
But anyway, that's not something libretro cores need to be concerned about. That's the job of the front end. That's the job of RetroArch or RA libretro or a standalone emulator. So I didn't have to deal with that, which means all you have to do with libretro is expose the RAM to the front end, and it takes care of the rest.
Gotcha. Do you think that is applicable to like most consoles, or is it difficult for some than others?
Probably the latter. I know that Retro Achievements works primarily by looking at the emulated console's state, right? Mm-hmm. Usually it's memory or a RAM or VRAM, right?
Right.
Consoles, my understanding is the whole Retro Achievements works by knowing that certain locations in memory are known to house certain kinds of data. It would also depend on what info Retro Achievements uses to judge achievements. The simplest thing, which thankfully is all I needed to do, was just expose the RAM. Some platforms that use different ways of addressing memory have their own requirements, and libretro lets you meet these requirements by setting memory descriptors, basically ways to turn addresses that the emulated console asks for into memory that's on your device, your computer, your laptop, your phone, whatever. That's my understanding of how Retro Achievements works. Now, what it could do, conceivably in the future, is look at save data. And I don't just mean blobs of SRAM, I mean like the file systems. Like the DSi, for example, the NAND image is just one big FAT file system. Mm-hmm. It's encrypted, although the keys are in the BIOS and everything. So if you have the key, you can just open it up and look at it with your favorite FAT library. And that's what MelonDS does, like upstream.
Gotcha. All right.
If Retro Achievements used that info, it would make things a little more complicated for me, but it may also allow for more detailed achievements, potentially.
That could be interesting. You add something new to the pot there if you can expose that huge chunk of just fat. I saw something mentioning that on your Git there, something under the enhanced tag about accessing the memory of a DSi there and there. Yeah. Add a subsystem for installing a DSiWare game to NAND image.
So the DSi NAND is only like 240 something megs. Can't expand it, so you have to juggle games yourself. Oh, and one other thing is MelonDS does not currently support direct boot of DSiWare. Like you have to go through the DSi menu to play a game, otherwise save data won't work.
Right.
If I can't direct boot DSiWare, I do the next best thing. Make it as quick as possible to access. Like whenever you load DSiWare, RetroArch, or any compatible front end really, I temporarily install the DSiWare onto the NAND, for the duration of the session. And that includes any save data. And then when you finish, I take it off the NAND and export the save data back to the host. So that way you won't run out of space.
Gotcha.
There may be occasions where you want to install a game on your NAND permanently. Right now, you can't do that in the core. You can do that upstream in the standalone emulator. But if there's sufficient demand, I may bump it up higher on my to-do list.
Gotcha. I mean, definitely one of those things not to, let's not build that mountain back up, but these things are definitely fun little just ideas to kick around, scrolling through this list and reading them. I do have some interest. This does prove itself to be a pretty exciting core if some of these things come to fruition. Do you see yourself as being a pretty big name in the community once this thing goes live, or are you already kind of talking about it? Do you see any recognition out and about, or how's that going?
Ask me again when this goes live. I'm not in this for fame and glory.
Sure.
Not that I'd turn it down, of course. More than anything, I want this to bring joy and excitement to people.
I was just wondering if you were seeing your name tossed around anywhere in the DS communities or things like that. Not to get a big head or, definitely not saying your celebrity status or trying to seek that down. Just trying to say if you're, a known figure out there.
Maybe a little bit, but I feel like the premiere of this episode may change that answer.
Sure.
So, I'm not sure right now.
No worries.
I am in several emulation for example, I don't use EmuDeck. I'm fine with just using the Steam version of RetroArch.
Oh, wow.
I'm in the EmuDeck Discord server, so I can talk to users about their needs.
You're right. Get their side of things, see what the pulse is like, and how you can address to fix it.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, it's a good skill to have, getting a read for the community. What have you, speaking of that, I'm sure you lurk in many, what is your read on us so far? You've seen RA as a whole, you've seen kind of how we function. The Discord can get a little unruly at times, but what would you say some of our pain points are?
I may not be the best person to ask about that, reason being, as I said at the beginning, I'm not actually the biggest user of retro achievements.
Sure.
I just want to make something great, and I know that Retro Achievements players would happen to appreciate this.
Absolutely.
There are users here, so where they go, I follow.
All right. I mean, it's a good mentality to have. It's definitely going to be something that behooves you once you're in the employment world. Nobody's going to pay for software that they don't need,
There is a point where my ultimate goal for MelonDS DS is to full feature parity with upstream. If you look in the README, you can see what some of the missing features are.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have ideas I want to pursue for after then.
Gotcha. Do you have toss out a few. Give us some ideas.
3 main things are, 1, Python bindings for libretro, not for the purpose of making a front end in Python, but to simplify writing test scripts. If you look at MelonDS DS code, I have a test suite set up, and it's been a lifesaver because fixing the same bug that occurred over and over, in this case, firmware being overwritten inappropriately, was a pain in the ass. So I figured, why not catch it before it happens, and then I wanted to deal with it again.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Problem is, the existing tools for testing libretro cores, well, I've outgrown them, so I'm sure you can guess by now how I feel about that. Fuck it, I'll do it myself.
Yep, absolutely.
Another option is starting a new Dolphin core.
Oh, wow.
I pull in the code from upstream instead of forking it.
Right.
That's another option.
Start extrapolating this idea onto other consoles.
Yes, although there's only so many I can do. I'm just one guy, so I gotta be a little choosy.
Right.
There's a third option, which is interesting. Are you familiar with the Flash emulator called Ruffle?
Yeah, actually, I am.
I wrote an experimental libretro core for it. It works, and it loads Flash movies and games. It just doesn't have much in the way of interactivity and features. But as a proof of concept, it's there.
It's semi-functional. It's there, yeah.
Now that I'm more familiar with the libretro API, in fact, I wrote a ton of documentation for it even, I am in a better position to overcome hurdles I ran into at the time, mostly with me not knowing how to do certain things I need to do. Also, I may pick that up again. Those are 3 ideas I have tossing around. I don't want to do more than one at a time, because if I try, none of them will get done.
Right.
I'm so focused on shipping MelonDS DS, so I can call it done.
Sure. No, it's definitely, like you said, it seems to be the big kind of shadow in the rafters the entire time that you've been working on these projects throughout your life, is getting either too many hands in the oven or just too big of, eyes, trying to pursue something too massive. It's going to be something that I feel like you'll have to keep an eye on and keep in check. As we get into these, handful of last minutes here, I kind of wanted to ask what your thoughts were on what you would tell other people who are maybe just trying to get started. They're maybe back in the day where you were still playing the DS, but maybe they're playing the Switch. What would you tell somebody who's having a liking towards technology, who's feeling a little ambitious over it, wanting to get things done? What would be some of your words to that kind of crowd? All
right, first, here's a curveball, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a second.
Okay.
You know how I've been saying a lot of what I've been working on has been fueled by boredom and impulse?
Mm-hmm.
For that is my ADHD. A lot of people with ADHD, or who are otherwise neurodiverse, tend to be drawn to video games for various reasons involving dopamine and biochemistry that I'm not going to get into right now.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
To your viewers in such a position, young people playing or discovering video games, is if this is true of you, the sooner you accept the ups and downs of this, the sooner you understand that it's a fundamental aspect of yourself and how it shapes your thoughts and decisions, the sooner you accept this part of yourself, the better position you'll be in to do anything else. I say that this whole process of developing MelonDS has been a journey of self-discovery and whatnot, and that's true. This is just one of the motivating factors.
Gotcha.
Getting a better handle on the downs of my ADHD. The ups
Right.
being intense focus and passion and a keen eye for ideas and details.
No, I definitely agree with that sentiment where, like, trying to suppress who you essentially are as a person, it's not going to get you any further. And it's as soon as you come to terms with, like, hey, these were the cards I was dealt, that you can go, wait a minute, I might actually be able to do something with these cards that I couldn't see before because I was kind of denying them. It's definitely a fantastic mentality to have, and something I think a lot of people need to keep in mind.
You ever play Persona, any of the Persona games?
Oh, of course.
That's basically a major theme of them, especially Persona 4. You know how everyone has to fight the worst parts of themselves?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Basically that, except you don't need to use weapons.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be something you accept as the worst part of yourself. It isn't even that. It's just you're probably demonizing something that doesn't need to be demonized.
Exactly. You don't need to demonize yourself. You just need to accept your flaws and be proactive in figuring out ways to deal with them.
Definitely.
And then this holds true regardless of how much you like video games.
Oh yeah, this is across the board. We've extended into just some good life advice. But we are unfortunately hitting that wall, Jesse. I do want to thank you for coming on, man. It was a fantastic discussion. We could keep going for another hour, I know damn well. But it's hitting that time point. Any final words, final thoughts?
Be excellent to each other.
Party on, dudes. All right, we'll see you next time, guys.